Hey weirdos, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to teach you this super fun art style and give you step-by-step tips along the way on how I use Watercolor paint. Please subscribe if you like art. The first thing I do is get all my paint set up. My trusty dog here, Lucky, always by my side. I don't use a wet palette. I just pre-mix all my colors in little tubs. So they're all ready to go. The first thing I do is I grab a painting that's already done. I didn't actually paint that painting. Somebody donated a bunch of canvases to me, so I grabbed one and it has this cool little mountain scene on it. And I tend to draw heads most of the time, so I looked at this painting and I saw a head in it. So I grabbed my watercolor pencils and I'm sketching the head out. I'm using watercolor pencil because it's fun. You can smear it around with water. You can wipe it off with a washcloth instead of having to erase. And the paint, acrylic paint, picks up the watercolor pencil color too. So if you pick a color you know you want to smear into your actual painting, it adds a little bit of weirdness and depth to it. This is what's fun about this art style. The first layers of this are going to be covered up in the end. All the first layers across this painting will eventually be covered up. So this part is just playing with color. I've got this yellow green in a filbert brush and I am just negative painting. That's what it's called. I'm painting around the sketch to give it some depth. And I love to use green as an underpainting color because it works well with the colors that I choose to use. Did some drips in there just for fun, give it some life. A lot of going into this part, I'm not worried about if I cross things off or go over them. I'm just getting some green in the background around the sketch. All right, then I grab the medium green and I know that my background is going to go dark at the top to light at the bottom behind the head. But I'm not going to paint over the head now. I'm just going to play with the background. So the thought process here is outline the head and then go up and down and left and right and do some basket weaving and kind of like offset those outlines. Once you do it a bunch of times, you'll see what I mean. You just pull an outline and then like maybe pull straight out left or right or up and down from it. And another thing I like to do is to find the corners and where lines meet and put dark spots there. It always adds some fun points of interest. When in doubt, do a vine. It's one of my go-to things I joke about, but it is absolutely true. When I don't know what to do in the background, or if it just needs something, I'll put a vine there. Remember, this whole first layer is going to be covered up by other layers, so the more you play around and have fun and really mess it up, the more depth your final painting will have. When in doubt, do a second vine. Again, dark color on the top, lighter colors towards the bottom, but I'm using yellow, green, and medium green across the entire background. This is titanium white and Hansa yellow mixed together, Watercolor paint. I pre-mixed it in a little tub. I used it on a painting a while back and I actually really like it, so I keep mixing it in this little tub. Again, I don't use a palette. I just work right out of the tubs, so I never have to worry about putting out paint I'm not going to use or lock myself into a color palette. I can just be free to just grab a color and go. All I'm doing right now is using this mixture really wet with a lot of water, and I'm touching the edges where the watercolor pencil is, which is pulling the crimson from the watercolor pencil into the face. It's actually kind of creating like a natural gradient of red to yellow, adding a cool little orange hue. So that's all I'm doing is I'm going around near the watercolor pencil, hoping to touch it a little bit with really wet yellow paint. Okay, now I'm going in with a less watered down version of the color. And I am pulling highlights. So anything that I think is way down at the very end of this painting going to have a highlight. Right now I am touching it with Hansa yellow mixed with white. I'm getting it all over the place, just getting that yellow in there. I keep switching from the head to the background because I'm letting the layers dry. This method of painting is so quick. You can do it on the fly, you can do it without thinking, you can completely turn off your emotions and just complete the task, which is why I love painting like this. It just becomes like a little video game. Performing the task, you don't have to worry or be stressed. Just filling in the background with green left and right, up and down, medium green, and also yellow green with filberts. Wide filberts. Not too wide. Medium filberts. This is titanium white from Novacolor that has already been watered down, mixed with a little bit of Liquitex matte medium to make it extremely translucent. I have a small round brush, like a, let's call it a 2 and or a 4, and I am just layering thick brush strokes that are going to like mimic hair. And while I'm pulling the white in, I am also hitting that watercolor pencil on the side to get some of that red to bleed into the white so that it becomes like messy and fun. It's always about fun. This is just me filling in fat white brush strokes over and over again, layering them. Once I get a lot of that white on there, it's pretty wet. I'm going to add some drips to kind of break up the outline of the face and to just do a couple of breakup lines on the background. White drips are always fun and move things forward and backwards. So you'll just have to have fun and play around with them. Again, I'm going back over the hair with less translucent white, more like titanium white Novacolor mixed with just a little bit of water. And I'm getting fatter brush strokes in there to like appear like hair with a round brush. And everything's very wet. Alright, while the hair is drying, we are going back to the background again. Again, we're going dark to light, top to bottom, so I'm pulling more of that medium green into the top to make it go darker. Pulling things towards that original outline I did around the head, and eventually if I pull enough things towards that outline, the outline will completely disappear. And now I'm just taking medium green Novacolor paint and mixing it with a bunch of water to make it drip and dripping it over the flower area and the hair, and try to hit the face at least once. It really, in the end, you got to keep in mind this is all kind of still the first layers. These will all be covered up by other layers. So the more you drip, the more you play, the more you smear, the cooler it will be in the end. The more shapes and depth and shadows from all the paint. It'll be so worth it just to play around and go crazy during this time. Enjoy it. The whole concept around the flowers here is that there's going to be a highlight. So there's going to be, like for this purple one, there's going to be a lavender and then there's going to be a dark purple. And I know that each of these flowers is going to have 2 tones, a light tone and a dark tone. So all I'm doing is adding a tone, and later I'll decide if I'm going to go lighter over it to add a highlight or darker over it to add a shadow. Always have fun when you're doing flowers. Be weird. One way of doing a flower is just doing a swirl. Just do a swirl. enjoy it. Do a dark colored swirl, and then end up later when it dries, do a light colored swirl over it. So two of the ways I do flowers in this painting are swirls, or I'm using a fat filbert and I'm pulling into the center, or I'm pulling out from the center. Play around with both of those to decide how you like your flowers to look. This is Honda Yellow mixed with a little bit of water just to make it fluid. And all I'm doing right now with a filbert is hitting everything that I think would be a highlight coming from the top left. And it's not perfect to human anatomy or even like light sources. But I've been doing faces long enough over and over and over again that I can just go across the face in a pattern. I can completely shut off my brain. I don't have to think or stress out. I can just go, hey, I'm making a head. Yeah. Defining the chin, defining the neck, defining the cheeks, defining the eyelids, getting some stripes in there, building out what I call the skeleton, where it's like these hard background lines and edges, up, down, left, right, outline the shapes. I'm pulling in some of that watercolor pencil this whole time because I'm keeping the paint really wet. While the face dries, I'm going back to my background and I'm just filling in the blanks. Any part that looks like the canvas is showing or there's white specks or my eye just goes, I need something there. Put a I put color there. I go over the medium green with the yellow green. And then the next time I do that layer, I will go over the yellow green with the medium green. So I'm constantly weaving these colors, slashing them over and over on top of each other. It ends up really cool in the end. Don't be afraid to cover things up. Now that the flowers are dry, I can go in with the highlight layer. I'm just taking the whatever color is below it and adding white, or I'm taking the next color up, the next shade up lighter that I have with me that I've already have mixed or is in a tube or whatever. I prefer Nova Color paint pretty much to any other paint because you don't have to add medium to it. Anyways, so I'm just going over the flowers with some highlights, a lighter version of the color that's underneath to make it interesting. I usually do the lips with a round brush. The first thing I do is I carve under that top lip and just get the shape of the mouth. And then I carve under the bottom part of the lip to get the other shape. And then I go up and down over and over with the round brush to fill in the lips. So there's some of that up and down texture in there. It's actually kind of bowing out a little bit. You follow the shape of the lip, if that makes sense. I am taking my watercolor pencil and I'm going back and I'm adding more pigment. So any paint that drags over this watercolor pencil is going to pick it up. So anywhere that has happened that I think is interesting, I'm adding more watercolor pencil there. So the next time I come across it with my paint layer, it pulls more of that red color into the yellow. Now I'm just taking my round brush with some water and I'm pulling out some of that watercolor pencil that I just added on there, pulling it out into the open area and trying to fill in everywhere on this face that looks like it just hasn't been painted on yet, technically. Okay, now I'm taking Hansa Yellow light and I am putting it anywhere I think there might be a shadow or where the mid-tone would hit the shadow. And I'm just filling the face thinking shadow, 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 as if the light was coming from the top left. So there's a shadow under the brow bone, there's a shadow under the cheek, etc., etc. And again, I grab my round brush, get some water, and start filling in any leftover gaps on that face. And trying to pull more of that red from the watercolor pencil out into the painting because I'm having so much fun seeing it. And then I go back in and I do some more drips. Drips coming off the white. I like contrasting drips. So drips coming off the white going onto something darker, or something dark coming off the background and going over something light. It just kind of pushes things backwards and forwards, and my eye really likes it. And now I'm adding some chromium oxide green, also Nova Color, with the filbert. Kind of, I'm pulling it like if I was going to be pulling it right behind the upper part of the head, just to kind of push that head forward a little bit. I like doing this. Just go pick a color and go straight across with it, and it'll pull things forward and push things backward. Again, left to right, outline it, and then left to right it till you can't see the outlines. This is me coming back in with a Posca paint pen, dragging down some drips, and then I actually go in and underline the bangs a little bit with the Posca paint pen because there was just something that was needed there, and I knew it was a tiny little stripe would make it better. Yay! Okay, this is me going back in with carbon black from Nova Color paint mixed with Liquitex matte medium, and it's literally like a drop of black paint in a bunch of mediums, so it's super clear. You can hardly tell that it still goes on, but it's extremely translucent. So I'm going around and I'm pulling out what I think are shadows with it, just barely. This is one of those things where you go across it once, you let it dry, and you go across it again, and it adds really cool, smooth kind of depth. Always time for more drips too after you finish up all the final details. Anything that's bothering you, fix it. If you don't know what that if you don't know what to do, cover it up, paint around it, try a couple different things. Do some drips, do some slashes around it, slash over it. And then this is me just going back with another layer of that really thin 10% maybe paint to 90% medium, if that. It's like a drop. Just getting one little hard line in there for fun. All the points and corners get shadows. Under the lips, in the corners of everything, get little tiny dots of this 10% black, transparent black. Just keep pulling things out and making it more interesting. You can always cover it up by re-adding the background color over it. And that is how you make a painting that's very interesting without stressing out too much at all. And you enjoyed it in like an hour, maybe an hour and a half tops, if you include setup and breakdown. But you had fun, you made something cool, and it doesn't matter if anyone else likes it as long as you like it. So have fun and keep painting.